Thank you. I guess I'll just make this my last question. So you mentioned the issue of the number of people at the tomb. Um, so wouldn't it be possible that it could just have been the maximum that is mentioned in one of the Gospels? Since, for example, in the case of John 20, which just at first mentions Mary Magdalene, it says that she went to go see it, but in verse 3, immediately, verse 2, actually, I'm sorry, when she reports back to the disciples, says, they have taken away the Lord of the sulfur out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they laid him. Couldn't that have indicated that while John's focus was on Mary, like probably the others, and focusing on the specific ones they named, they could still recognize that there's still multiple women that are with them?
Well, I think that particular line's a bit ambiguous because I feel like the we portion could also refer to like we as a group, like they've taken him, and we like, as a group don't know. So I don't consider that to mean like we as in me and my group of ladies here, my posse. We don't know where they took him. Like, I think she was more in a collective we.
All right, that's fair. I guess this will actually be the last question. Do you think it's possible that there could actually be more women that went to the temple than what is named in all four of the Gospels of that specific account?
Oh, yeah, there could have been a whole Justin Bieber crowd following them over there.
Justin Bieber crowd.
I mean, I think that on a more serious note, I think that I think there's no way to know exactly. I mean, could there have been more? Yeah, sure. I don't know how you would actually know if there were more. I mean, obviously, I don't think the incident actually happened, but I think that neither do the gospel authors. I don't think they actually know what happened, because at the tomb, you have multiple different theological interpretations of Old Testament scripture as to what was found at the tomb. So I don't think that they were recording history at that point. I think that they were just recording like a theological narrative in order to teach shit.
Okay. So we are at 10 minutes and 5 seconds. So that's pretty good. So now I am going to turn the table. So now, GE, it is your opportunity to ask questions that you may have for RC Apologists. And let me just reset. Your time starts now.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious, how do you reconcile like the time frame of the different birth narratives in the New Testament?
Define what you mean by I'm sorry, just to clarify, what you mean by the birth narratives in the timing? Okay,
well, Matthew, I believe, has Jesus being born sometime prior to 4 BCE, while Luke has him being born after 6 AD.
All right. Well, concerning and what were they again?
4 BCE and 6 AD.
Okay. Trying to think where they mentioned that.
I want to say Matthew, I think it was starting in chapter 2, and then in Luke, I want to say it's somewhere in 2. So I think Matthew spends the entire first chapter on John.
Well, I mean, unless I could see where it's saying that, they're clearly laid out in this specific BCE or
well,
AD.
I mean, in the text it doesn't say that, but Herod dies in 4 BCE. So sometime prior to 4 BCE, the Gospel of Matthew says Jesus was born, and then in Luke you have sometime after 6 AD, which is when Quirinius became the governor of Syria at the time, which is directly mentioned in Luke. You have Jesus being born. So, I mean, there's a clear 10-year difference there. I mean, that's like a difference between 2000 and 2010.
Okay. Well, I mean, I still don't see like how, because you do say that, it's not there by saying, this was in 4 or 6 BC as far as the things I don't see where that's stating that there's.
Well, so I mean, does that mean that you think Herod could have the slaughter of the innocents and he's calling for it from his grave or something?
No, I don't think that he would be calling for it from his grave.
Well, right. So that's, I mean, if Herod called for the slaughter of the innocents, because he got visited by the Magi, and the Magi said, "Oh, the king is born," and he's like all worried about the king, so he calls for the slaughter of the innocents because he's worried about this king. He couldn't have done that after his death. He would need to do it before his death. His death was in 4 B.C.E. So the logical conclusion here is that this particular section of Matthew, when Jesus was born, happened prior to 4 B.C.E.
Right. It's very possible that could be the case for that.
Well, no, I mean that's the only way that it could have happened with Herod.
Right.
I mean, it's fine if you don't have a good answer for why there's such a big difference between the two, but I can guarantee you. Go ahead.
I mean, as far as for the dating, and Lord, say like the birth of Jesus and such, I would hold to sort of a different view on when Jesus was born. Like some people do believe that he was born on December, like most people celebrate. But I, of course, maybe in slight years as well, have a difference in terms of what people traditionally ascribe to it based on some recent evidence and examination that's gone out. So I think it's very possible for Herod, to have been alive during the time of Jesus's birth. And such. So in other words, Jesus was around that particular time of Herod before his death.
Oh, okay. Well, then, I mean, that means that he couldn't have been born in Quirinius's time. So are you trying to say that Luke is in fact incorrect as to the circumstances around Jesus' birth and that Matthew is correct?
No, I don't see how there would be a difference between the two.
Well, I mean, Quirinius can't go back in time and rule Syria in 4 BCE.
What do you mean by Quirinius, like the city? Or
no, Quirinius, like the governor of Syria in 6 AD.
Sorry about that. I ran out of tea and now I'm a little tired. So, I mean, I don't see where the problem is concerning Quirinius then. I mean...
Okay, well, in Luke, Quirinius calls for a census, or not Quirinius, sorry, it's the Caesar at the time. He calls for a census, which we actually don't have evidence of that actually happening, where they call for a census and you have to go back to your ancestral home 1,000 years ago. But he calls for a census during the reign of Quirinius in Syria. He was appointed governor, and he wasn't appointed governor until 6 AD.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't have much knowledge on that particular subject. I hadn't been told about that specific thing, but I hadn't put much study into that. I just simply focus on some other issues. So I wouldn't be doing any good on my side or yours to address that. So, okay.
Well, can you tell me when do you think that he was born?
Quirinius or Jesus?
Jesus.
I don't have any specifics on that. I think I've heard some people at least mention the month being September.
Okay, but you don't have an idea of the year.
The year, no.
Okay, all right. Which I don't have any kind of qualms about the whole year thing. So what was your contention about Herod? Because I wrote down Herod and I forgot what you had said.
What, concerning what Josephus recorded?
I guess so.
Well, Josephus, because you mentioned at one point, Herod ordering the slaughter of the innocents. But that's not the first time we have something where it was written by only one account and nobody else, especially the fact that it was affecting a large amount of people. Since a lot of people had lost their children during that time, why no one else wrote it when Pliny the Elder had a relative that was there at during the time of the Pompeii incident. And I'm sure others had relatives that were there too, but nobody wrote anything about it. And Pliny's was a private letter that he was writing. It wasn't any public work that was trying to be sent out to the public. and he only mentioned it in brief passing because he had a relative that lived there. Then you have Josephus, who records where there is an order by Herod of the slaughter of Jews, not just simply children, but of Jews in general, and that he forced the canceling of the Passover. This would affect a lot of the Jews, but only Josephus records of this event. So my contention was, simply that, if we're going to doubt the slaughter ordered by Herod, and only because it's mentioned in the New Testament, then we should be skeptical about the specific events mentioned by Pliny the Elder and Josephus, especially Josephus, concerning this other, I'm assuming different Herod. Don't know exactly the name or when this specifically was recorded by him.
Okay, well, I would say that in historical studies, anything that only has like one source for it or whatnot, I mean, it wouldn't be taken as 100% accurate. I feel like that's another thing that's being mistaken here, is that it's either 100% yes it did or no it didn't, and they work in degrees. Like, we can say that it probably happened. Now, unlike the volcano with Pliny the Younger and whatnot, or Pliny the Elder, unlike that with Herod, in the slaughter of the Jews, you have to overcome the obvious link to the Moses story. And you have to be able to prove that they didn't just make this up using Moses' story.